Um, I, as a human rights activist and jurist in Suriname, I've lived there for let's say almost 20 years. Um, I've dealt with LGBT issues before, and my first bachelor was also on, let's say, kind of controversial influence of, let's say, the freedom of religion against that of anti-discrimination concerning LGBT issues. So for my master's, I wanted to broaden that LGBT research, just to bring more light on specific situations of lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgenders. And then I came across European law and asylum law, which is still a heavy topic within Europe nowadays. Um, and I wanted to focus specifically on how that relates to LGBT asylum seekers. So that was mostly the main inspiration for coming up with this kind of topic. People say that within Europe you're always protected if you're an LGBT citizen, or let's say you have more protections than the rest of the world. But I still see some nuances in that when it comes to LGBT asylum seekers. It's not that easy to be an LGBT asylum seeker within Europe. You go into these asylum centers where you're with people from maybe the same countries as you, and they may also have a slightly different or hostilic view of you as an LGBT person, maybe even coming from a Muslim country where it's still forbidden. And yeah, it's kind of hard for LGBT citizens to then just say they're LGBT because they're in Europe. And the protections that they also have in Europe are great, but they're not perfect. So that's why I focused mostly on this kind of subject. Well, I focused on the LGB issue within the European legal framework, and it's more focused on asylum seekers who are coming from countries where there are less human rights protections for lesbians, gays, and bisexuals, also transgenders. And that's why I just focused on a specific part of the asylum legal framework for specifically LGB people. And it was mostly focused on the fact that there are rules within the EU legal framework, human rights rules also governing all kinds of asylum seekers, where there is still some repackaging and rephrasing being done by individual states. I did research on that of the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Germany. And what I found is that even though most countries in their domestic laws have stated that they do not require or ask people to be discreet about their sexual orientation, they are still being, let's say, they are still being checked if they would be discreet. Let's say, to give like a broader view or some more explanation, if you're in the country of origin, let's say you're in Iran or in one of the countries where LGBT people are being persecuted, you can face jail time, or you can even face a death penalty. And when you try to be discreet about it, that chance that you would be persecuted is a lot smaller. Well, most in the EU, people, or let's say lawmakers, have said that you cannot ask people, asylum seekers, to be discreet in their country of origin, but when they seek asylum in European countries, mostly those member states, not all of them, but most of them, do try to check whether such a person can be discreet, and that's the whole repackaging and rephrasing. Let's say the UK, they have found a new way to test if an asylum seeker can have asylum within the United Kingdom. They ask not only why they would be discreet, and they also have a few reasons. If you say you're going to be discreet because of you don't want to upset your family or your friends or your colleagues, then you may not have asylum within the United Kingdom. If you say you will be discreet in the country of origin because you fear for your life or being persecuted, then you would fit the bill to become an asylum seeker and also gain asylum within the United Kingdom. So that's the slightly changes they have, or the slightly interpretation that they have done. Most member states also are still doing this to this day. Also, the human rights acts within the European Union. You have the ECHR, but still different countries have their own way of interpreting these legal documents, and they also still have some bit more control of who they let into their country. So you can say that even though Brexit hinges a lot on people are coming into the country and it's the fault of the EU, you can still see that many of the countries, many of the member states still have power over their own laws and how they enact these. So yeah, this topic may be specific, but it can also be seen in a broader context of migration and also diversity. I've read some of the stories where people are trying to flee the country. And as you can also see, what I found that to be shocking is that member states, the persons who are who have the responsibility to check if a person would fall under the asylum laws, that there are a lot of reasons why you cannot grant asylum to a person. And many of these, let's say, authorities within the member states use all of these reasons to, let's say, to deny LGBT persons asylum. Well, I started with a few that the protections awarded to people who are lesbians, gay, and bisexual here in Europe are one of the best, and that if you just say that you're lesbian, gay, or bisexual, that you can enjoy all the protections, even if you're not a EU citizen. What I have found is that that view is not entirely correct. It means that even when you're a citizen from another country, and even if you're LGBT, even if you are being persecuted, that doesn't automatically mean that you can gain all the protections in Europe as any other European citizen. So that was for me a bit striking, but I also found that European law also protects its own first, and then it seeks also to protect others who actually really need it. So the European laws and regulations are there to make sure that the right kind of people who actually need this kind of protection are given that kind of protection within Europe. Well, I can also say that some of these rules may be too stringent, too tight, and that it may also mean that it has an adverse effect on the people who actually need this kind of protection, and that it is sometimes a lot harder for them to gain the protection of for just being a lesbian, gay, or bisexual. Well, in Suriname, I used to be a LGBT activist. That was also during my first bachelor's degree. I wanted to not only use my own education to further for my own benefit, but also for the benefit of others. And so I started helping LGBT platform and LGBT networks in Suriname, let's say, to have more inclusion within the laws of Suriname, and we did a good job. In 2015, we changed the laws in Suriname to also include protections against hate crime and discrimination of LGBT citizens. So I wanted to, let's say, broaden this success here, and that's why I'm very passionate about this subject, because it's also something personal for myself. I am lesbian, I am gay, and it's something that I find that it's important to keep this subject going, to keep people informed, that there are still people out there in the world that are still being persecuted just because for loving someone else. So that's why that's actually my main motivation to keep researching these type of subjects when it concerns LGBT people.